Hi everyone, welcome back to our lesson. Today, I'm going to introduce you on how to get to know personal information questions. Personal information questions are the basis for any conversation in English and so are important for when you meet somebody for the first time. Basically, they are questions to ask when you want to know more about other people. The information questions are started with the question words such as what, who, where, when, why, and how, or often called as 5W plus 1H, as well as yes-no questions, which is known as the closed questions because the answers to that type of questions is also closed answers. Personal information questions cover the following points, such as names, sex, works or occupations, marital status, friends and families, ages, contact details, hobbies, addresses, free times, activities, and so on. You may have already known basic common questions, most particularly the personal information questions in English before. And you may even have an idea of how questions are formed. There are many different types of questions, and each with its own rules as according to the English grammar. So, within 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to introduce you with the focus on the formula of forming the questions in simple present with auxiliary verbs, do or does, as well as the be verbs am, is, are. Added to that, you will have the chance of exploring the new vocabularies related to personal information in the examples, sentences provided later in this lesson. Now, let's take a look at the questions with question words in the simple present. You might have been aware of the definition and functions of simple present tense from the previous lesson, so therefore, it's fair enough for me not to repeat that again, or otherwise we'll spend our 10 to 15 minutes learning nothing today. So, why don't we just start with forming questions with question words in simple present straight away then? Just for you all to know that there are two different ways of forming the questions in simple present. They are as follows. One, questions with question words what, who, where, when, and why, and or how at the beginning of the questions or before the auxiliary do or does. And the next, questions started with do or does, or with do or does placed at the beginning of the questions or before the subject, usually known as closed-ended questions, or without question words. Just for you to know that does is only used when the subject is in the form of the third person singular, such as he, she, or it. To make it clearer for this part, please take a good look at the following formula suggested for questions with question words come at the beginning of the question or before the auxiliary do or does, as well as the example sentences in simple present in the table. Question word plus do or does plus subject plus infinitive verb plus object and then plus the question mark. However, this would work in two ways. The auxiliary verb do come after the question words what, when, where, why, and how, only applied for the subject such as I, you, we, they, Maria and Antonio. And then, while the auxiliary verb does comes at the beginning of the question, only applied for the third person singular subject such as he, she, it, Maria only, or Antonio only. Please have a look at the example sentences as according to the formula above in the table. As what you can see in the table, the question word what sits before the auxiliary verb do, followed by the subject you plus the infinitive verb do, and then followed by the object for a living plus the question mark to make it a question. So, in full, the question would be, what do you do for a living? So, what do you do for a living? The same thing is also applied for the second question word, where. It sits before the auxiliary verb does, because it is followed by the third person singular subject, she, plus the infinitive verb, live, and then the question mark to make it a question. So in full, the question would be, where does she live? Where does she live? So, the next is the question word how, where the rule is similar to the question word what and where. Again, the question word how sits before the auxiliary verb do, followed by the subject you, plus the infinitive verb spell, then followed by the object, your surname, plus the question mark. To make it a question in full, the question would be, how do you spell your name? How do you spell your name? Please also refer to the last column for the possible answers to the questions. Well, I hope this part is clearer for you, and please do practice them at home during your free times. Please now come to the question started with do or does, or with do or does placed at the beginning of the questions before the subject, which is known as closed-ended questions. Please also refer to the formula on how to construct the questions. Please refer to the formula. Do or does plus subject plus the infinitive verb plus object and then followed by the question mark. Let's look at the first closed-ended question, started with the auxiliary verb do, followed by the subject you, plus the infinitive verb leave, and followed by the object in Becora, and then the question mark to make it a closed-ended question. So in full, it would be, do you live in Becora? Do you live in Becora? Next is the closed-ended question, started with the auxiliary verb does, where it sits at the beginning of the question or before the third person singular subject, she, and followed by the infinitive verb go, and then plus the object, to school, followed by the question mark to make it a full closed-ended question. in full. Does she go to school? Does she go to school? Please also refer to the last column for the possible closed-ended answers to the closed-ended questions. Now, let's take a look at the question words with to-be verbs am, is, are in the simple present. Let's take a look. Please look at the formula for forming the questions in the simple present tense using to-be verbs am, is, are. There are also two different ways for forming questions in present tense as follows, like what we mentioned earlier. Now, let's take a look for this part. First, questions with question words what, when, where, who, why, and how at the beginning of the questions or placed before to-be verbs am, is, are. And the next, questions started with to-be verbs am, is, are, or placed at the beginning of the questions before the subject, which is usually known as closed-ended questions or without question words. Okay, now let's have a look at the formula for this part, for the first part. You see, question word plus to-be verbs am, is, are, and then followed by subject plus object plus question mark or interrogative. Please look at the three example questions here as according to the formula. In the first question, the question word what sits before the to-be verb is, followed by either a subject or a subject complement, your name, then plus the question mark. To make it in full, question, what is your name? What is your name? Then it's the question word where, followed by the to-be are, plus the subject you, and then the object from, followed by the question mark. To make it a full question, where are you from? The same rule is also applied for the last question, where the question word how sits before the to-be verb are and followed by the subject you plus the object now. To make it a full question, how are you? How are you now? Please also look at more examples as to the questions as according to the formula. Where are you from? Who are they? Why are you late? What is your mobile number? What is your ID number? What is your email address? Etc. Okay, now we come up to this part, which is about the yes/no questions, also known as the closed questions. Okay, this time we don't need question words, okay, in this particular question type, because they have been replaced by the to-be verbs am, is, are. So the to-be verbs are now placed at the beginning of the sentences. To make it clearer, please take a good look at the following grammar formula for forming the yes/no questions. To be, am, is, are, plus subject plus object plus question mark. In the first example sentence, the to-be verb am comes at the beginning of the question and followed by the subject I and then the object to your class plus the question marks to make it a full question. Am I late to your class? Am I late to your class? In the second question, the to be verb is sits before the subject or placed at the beginning of the question, followed by the subject, Maria, plus the object, in the class now, and followed by the question mark to make it a question. Is Maria at home now? Is Maria at home now? The same rule is also applied to the last question, where to be are placed at the beginning of the question and followed by the subject, you, and then plus the object, at home now, plus the question mark, again to make it a full question. Are you at home now? Are you at home now? Please also refer to the possible answers for the questions provided there. If you are watching this on TV right now, you might be able to tell what's on the paper or what the paper is about. And if you know what it is, you might also be able to tell where do you normally see it. Well, I've got to tell you that this is an arrival or departure recording forms that is given either in paper or electronics. As I've told you earlier, our lesson today is on the personal information questions, and you might be wondering on what is the connection in between the personal information questions and the forms like the arrival and the departure card displayed on the screen. It's important to be familiar with filling in forms because most forms cover personal information questions and sometimes only consist of short information questions. They can be in a single word or a phrase instead of a full question, as what you are about to see in the following example form. Okay, as I've told you earlier that our lesson today is on personal information questions, and you might be wondering on what is the connection in between the personal information questions and the forms like the arrival and departure card displayed on the screen, or what you have just seen just now. It is important to be familiar with filling in forms because most forms cover personal information questions and sometimes only consist of short information questions. They can be in a single word or a phrase instead of a full question, as what you are about to see in the following example form. Okay, as explained that most forms contain only very short information as this one. On top of the form, it says first name and sure name, where they take the place of these full questions. What is your first name or what is your sure name? Plus the title. Either you are a Mr. or a Mrs. or a Miss, etc., as they are important to know from filling out a form. Then nationality is in place of the full question, where are you from or what's your nationality? And address, as in full question, they would be what is your address or where do you live? And then the word sex or gender, if you are a boy or a girl, a male or a female, etc. And age in place of the full question, how old are you or what's your age? And then marital status, married or single, in place of the full question, are you married or single, etc. And then your phone number, either it is a home or a mobile number, where in full questions they would be what's your home number or what's your mobile number. And then email address in place of what is your email address. Okay, we have come to the end of the lesson today. I hope that you are making the most of time. Practice asking the questions regarding or about the personal information questions that you've just learned today. And that's it for today. You have been fantastic learners. Goodbye. you.